there, we have a prominent booth with endless food systems. We're going to be displaying one of our newer domes there. So kind of a lot of things going on with us and the endless food system. So anyway, a lot of interesting things will be going on. Hopefully you guys will be able to attend there. And then also on the 25th in the evening after the day's event at the expo there, Jordan Cade will be coming. And in addition, I don't know if you know Jordan Cade, but he's a Revolution rocker. He's got a lot of really good Liberty music. He's really good entertainer, along with some other speakers. Does anybody else have any other announcements for this month? Okay. The main speakers today are Sarara Corva. She does medical education, medical marijuana education. And so I think it's going to be a really important discussion today. A lot of people are affected by health issues, and medical marijuana plays a really big role in that, as far as our ability to heal ourselves, our ability to deal with pain, and so it's becoming a major issue. And then Phranq Tamburri is going to be here as well. I haven't got an ETA on him yet, but he will be here, so he's like that. And we'll have Kathy Inman. She's the former director of Normal in Arizona, right? And she is now with Mom Force AZ, which is still about education, and it's more about trying to get off addictions of a lot of pain medications and things like that. I'll let her speak a few minutes to that as well. And then Tom Dean, and he used to be, I don't have a bio on you, but you used to be, I'll let you explain as well, you used to be an attorney for Normal, right?
Yeah, I was legal director for Normal.
Okay, so then we'll have you speak. Okay, so if there's no other announcements, we'll go ahead and have Kathy come up. Okay.
Morning, everybody. I'm glad you guys are all here at the Arizona Breakfast Club, an Arizona tradition, and I'm very honored to be here and see you guys again. I'm Kathy Inman, and as stated, I am the former state director for Normal in Arizona, and now I'm doing another of my own projects. Prior to that, I did have a women's outreach going on while working with Normal groups since 2008, actually. And I started one in Phoenix because I realized, this is a really serious subject. Here I am, I'm a mom. Why did you get into this? Well, I watched my daughter in high school and college, and I spoke to her friends, and we had some very honest conversations, and my feeling was that there's far too much binge drinking, far too much pharmaceutical use by students, both in high school and in the colleges, and that I really felt, as a woman with respect for life, that we could save some lives. I didn't want to see another mother lose a child from binge drinking overdose or pharmaceutical overdose. And I thought, if we can bring some awareness about this marijuana, which technically is called cannabis, that's the proper term for it. If we can bring some awareness about this and let people know that it's never taken a life, that maybe we could also have the freedom that California enjoys. My daughter and I traveled to California in 2007, and folks were just enjoying freedom, and I thought, what about Arizona? Here we are, a state that stands for life and liberty. And they're keeping this as a felony. You're going to be a felon if you have a little bit of this, and it never took a life on record. Those were the important things for me coming in. Over the years, I've seen so much, and I can't keep quiet about it, and that's why I will continue to be a cannabis advocate. Since Proposition 203 passed in 2010, I'll tell you, coming in, I was a cynic about medical marijuana. I didn't know, are these people in California just saying something to get this legalized? What are they doing? I'm not really sure. Well, I've learned a big lesson about that. I've learned, and I just want to learn more. And last week, I actually became certified as an Americans for Safe Access representative to actually be a purveyor of education. I'm going to be the sales rep, hopefully, for selling education, because this is an education that people don't get in school about cannabis. This is something that people don't talk about. So we on our own as advocates are educating as fast as we can so that we can help people to understand this. Because as I was beginning to say, since Prop 203 passed, I have seen and heard more people come to me and tell me how they feel better, how they they've started to take less and less pharmaceuticals. And I've learned about pharmaceuticals, and the harsh reality is that we lose someone every 20 seconds in America. We're learning that we learn someone every 20 seconds from a pharmaceutical overdose. In our own state, we lose 10 children a month from pharmaceutical overdose. This is wrong, and if we can save some lives, that's why I'm going to keep talking about it. Not only are we saving lives, we're extending lives and improving them. People that take medical cannabis instead of pharmaceuticals are getting off their couch, they're feeling less like a zombie, and this is how they're describing feeling on pharmaceuticals, and they're feeling less like that, and they're feeling more happy and aware and energetic, and their lives are coming back to them, and that's what's important to me. I've discovered so many statistics, it makes my head spin. 1 in 5 children are on a daily medication in America. I think that's crazy. So yes, as Mom Force, I'm standing up against the overdosing of America, the over-medicating of America. And anyone who does any kind of search, you guys do your research, I know you're activists, all of you, if you're in the Breakfast Club, because you're getting into all issues here in Arizona, and I'm glad for that. Thank goodness there's folks like you. Without us and our voices, things would never change. So thank you for that. But please do your research about medical cannabis, because what you'll come up with is that our seniors are over-medicated, our kids are over-medicated, and folks in the middle are over-medicated too. And so we've just got to talk to each other and make people aware. And my feeling was is that if I could go, after having been the state director for NORML, I thought, you know, there's so many things we did as NORML to educate the general public, but one thing that I felt we didn't do was reach out to our seniors. So I thought, you know, that's something I'm going to go ahead and focus on, because our seniors can improve, extend, and sometimes save their lives with this medicine. And so on an individual basis, I can help people, and then in the long run, why, our seniors vote. They're the ones who vote, and they're going to vote for change. And if we can tell enough people in the next 2 years, as Tom's going to explain, we've got some good stuff coming up on the ballot in 2016. And, you know, quite honestly, those who speak out against marijuana in our state will say, oh, well, these folks just came, and it's the same people. There's a couple, there's the the Marijuana Policy Project, who did Prop 203, is coming back in 2016 to go for legal regulation of cannabis in our state. And yes, I am going to stand up for that. And the reason being is because there are so many people that could use this medicine that will not touch it as long as it's illegal. So when people that stand against marijuana, cannabis, will say, well, these people said they were just bringing it for medical purposes and now all they want is legalization. Well, there's a reason for that. The reason is not because we all want to get high and that's what they'll say. The reason for me, especially, is because I know that good people like my mom will never try this natural alternative to pharmaceuticals as long as it's illegal. So with it being legal, she doesn't have to get on a list to try it. She can go to Walgreens and pick it up, hopefully, or however they're going to set it up, who knows. In the future, I want people not to feel alienated for using medical cannabis. So next Saturday, going to Sun City. We've got a lovely lady here today to explain medical cannabis. I'm so glad. And we're going to also have a friend of hers, Dr. Elaine Burns, will be with us to explain that to the folks. This is at the All Saints of the Desert Episcopal Church. They're in the heart of Sun City. And I'll say it's a win for us, honestly, because we were not allowed to have this event at the Sun City Rec Center. They turned us down when we went to ask. So really happy to be at All Saints of the Desert Episcopal Church next Saturday from 12 to 3 to explain medical cannabis. We're going to have we're going to actually have a free buffet there to get people in touch with more vegetables, quite honestly, because when people get in touch with cannabis, they understand that cannabis is a vegetable also. There's so many things to learn about this. I know that sounds crazy, but people in our community have learned so much over the last couple of years, you guys, and there's so much help, so much good information to be learned, and I want to share that with you. So hopefully this will be the first of many, and hopefully we'll have Sarara join us at one of these in the future. We also had, if you guys have any clue about this, I was able to this year speak to Sheriff Joe about medical cannabis. And I think he understands it. And the reason I went to him is because I know there's a lot of people that don't understand medical cannabis who do understand and like Sheriff Joe. So I figured if I could explain it to him and they understood that he was starting to understand it, they might open their minds to understanding it as well. Sheriff Joe was invited to this event. He said, unfortunately, he was booked at this one, but he will join us at another one in the future. So we will see him there. I want to thank all you guys for listening to me. I'm going to go and hang some of these posters around Sun City, so unfortunately I won't be able to stick with you this morning, but I know you're in great hands with these two wonderful speakers over here. Thank you so much for listening.
Talk about legislative issues as regards to marijuana in Arizona.
Thank you. I tell you, it does my heart so good to know that Kathy is out there doing all this stuff. She brings she definitely defeats the kind of stereotypical idea about what a marijuana consumer or a person who would advocate for reform in the area of marijuana policy should look like. I think I heard them talking about an S word over there, which I'm guessing means stoner, and everyone sort of has an image in their mind. And Kathy has, in the last few years here, done so much, I think, to kind of change hearts and minds of people who maybe otherwise had that negative association with cannabis and maybe a type of person or a member of a counterculture that they felt threatened by. Kathy obviously has given them a different image to think about, and I'm glad that she's out there continuing to do that. Thank you, Kathy. My name is Tom Dean. I have been working as a criminal defense attorney for, it's going to be my law lessons will be old enough to drink here this November. So I've been doing pretty much just marijuana law for a number of years. I became the legal director for NORML back in 1998 and moved to DC from Flagstaff. And then eventually moved back to Arizona, settled in down here in the Phoenix area, but have been am a lifetime member of NORML's legal committee, and that is now for 19 years running, and continue to be involved in local, not only as my career as a marijuana lawyer, but also as involved locally in these various initiatives and efforts to continue to reform marijuana policy. What's most exciting right now is the 2016 initiative that we expect to be on the ballot. The Marijuana Policy Project, as Kathy said, is the organization that brought us the Medical Marijuana Act, has officially filed registration with the Secretary of State to become a political committee with the aim of putting this on the ballot in 2016. Of course, they've got to collect a bunch of signatures. They can't even start doing that technically yet, and that they spent a lot of money doing that. So fortunately, they've got they're well funded, and they have been working with the Arizona Dispensary Association, the ADA, which is a group that, as you might guess, is representative of the existing medical marijuana dispensaries around Arizona. And recently, I can announce that we just recently formed a broad coalition among consumer-oriented marijuana policy reform groups. It's called the Arizona Cannabis Consumer Coalition, and that's made up of various groups, including NORML, other groups like Safer Arizona. Some of you might have heard of them. They were trying to put an initiative on the 2014 ballot, just didn't have the funding necessary to collect the signatures. the Phoenix Cannabis Coalition, which is another group, a newer group called RAMP. And we've already begun to craft proposed amendments to the current criminal code, which would essentially legalize marijuana and also dramatically reduce the level of crime, whether misdemeanor or felony, that would apply to any particular marijuana offense. And me personally, I would like to see there be no restrictions on any amount of marijuana or any number of plants. But, you know, what the Arizona public or voting public is willing to accept, apparently might not go that far. So we're trying to put together something that will pass, have very meaningful, cause very meaningful change, reduce an awful lot of suffering, and advance the cause of freedom. And if we have to pass, I guess, something that isn't as perfect as we'd like it to be now, the consensus seems to be, well, let's do that. But the idea is basically going to be, so far what we're looking at, and this can change, this is all kind of a fluid process right now, but we're looking at basically allowing people to lawfully possess up to 2.5 ounces of marijuana, lawfully grow 12 plants, marijuana plants, in the privacy of their own home or at some other property that they are leasing or own, and then to not without requiring any kind of registration or licensing or anything like that, so it's not like you have to go to the government and get put on a list or anything. And then also to a lot of other areas of law, like reforming forfeiture laws, DUI laws as they pertain to people who are operating their vehicles with marijuana in their system, but who are not actually impaired. And also provisions that would protect, have application in the area of search and seizure, and a lot of other areas of law that sort of are related to the war on marijuana that have been damaged or have been affected in a negative way, in terms of our freedoms in a negative way by the war on marijuana, to try to roll that back as best as we can and get it passed. So I'm sure see more about this in the coming weeks and months as we continue to move forward. We expect that there may be a complete initial draft as soon as the end of this month, even, of the initiative. And this is an exciting time for marijuana policy reform. And when Keith Straub founded NORML back in 1970, he's famous for the quote, he guarantees that marijuana will be legal by 1975. He's off a little bit on that one, but you know, it is an exciting time. We can see that the momentum is there. For the first time in my involvement in marijuana policy reform, I feel very confident that I am on the right side of history, that, you know, the correct side of history, that is, that we are going to ultimately prevail. And that it's going to happen probably sooner than we might have thought just maybe 5 years ago. And so it's a really exciting time to see the American people and the people here in Arizona embracing those ideas and being willing to change their mind and embrace the concept of freedom and harm reduction. Not just in marijuana prohibition, but even the war on drugs in general. So I appreciate your time. Thanks. I look forward to hearing from Sarah now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to have Dr. Phranq come up and introduce Sarara. He's the one who introduced her a few months ago, and she was on her patient for, actually, I think 2 or 3 hours, and they did some post-interview. So anyway, it's going to be a really good, a lot of information for all of us as regards to, you know, health issues, whether we are allowed to use it, whether we're not allowed to use it, legalization or non-legalization, and also for just any practical alternatives. Anyway, Dr. Phranq.
Nice to see many of you here. You know, it's been a while since I've been to Coco's. It's been a while since we came back. I think it was at the other breakfast club last time I was here. So many of you know me. I'm a physician. I practice prostate cancer, specialize in prostate cancer assessments. It's an international cash practice. And I'm not here to advertise prostate cancer this early in the morning. I do prostates all week. So I left my gloves in the car this time. But anyway, I did part of this for a while in this community, the libertarian community, the patriot community. A lot of what I do when I bring to medicine is being an advocate for the patient. Patients think they're coming to see me for medicine, which ultimately they are, but what they're really often looking for is a doctor to take liability risks and to be an advocate for the patient, since it seems to have been kind of upside down. That's kind of a quick 2-second on what I do. Obviously, I've been part of Phranq for some time. I was actually a member of Normal back when I was in college. It was funny because I never smoked anything. I never drank alcohol. I think I had my first drink of alcohol was at Bartles and James Wine Cooler when I turned 21. That's what a goody two shoes exactly what I did. And yet I was a member of Normal simply out of the liberty component when I understood the facts. Never smoked. So I was a grandfather to vice president of the Penn State Normal chapter, simply because I was a pre-medder who never smoked, and I was a member of Normal. So like the president right now did not seem to fit the mold I gather. So anyway, we happen to have our medical practice, about 5 or 6 doctors, and Sarara, who will be introduced in a moment, she was one of our patients there, and she'll try and tell her story a little bit. I don't want to speak for her, but she had a health issue herself, and over time learned about the world of cannabis. And she worked with different doctors. I heard about her through the grapevine because I had some patients now that this has become legalized who began asking about it. I'm also a professor of urology, and many of my medical students began asking me about it. Everyone except the president of the medical college, who wanted to put his head under the rock, and our medical board that decided to ignore this. Especially being in the naturopathic community, if anyone should be able to prescribe an herb that deals with the mind and the body, it should be a naturopathic physician. There's no one better than that. And yet, our profession was hiding their head under the rock because they're afraid of some of these legal overtones. So I'm going to be talking about some of that and some pragmatic issues and questions you might have afterwards about, as far as from the physician's point of view, what a patient can do, some of the legal issues, and for many of us from the libertarian perspective, some of the thoughts that we have or concerns. But ultimately, because of Sarara, she's extremely, this is a special guest here, she wound up creating the first ever convention for physicians. So I want to be clear, there's been a few marijuana or cannabis conferences going on around the country, and of course a lot in Denver. But Sarara and her partner, she'll talk about maybe a little bit about that, but they created a seminar, a conference, 3-4 days in a fantastic setting in Denver, Mile High State, of course. And by the way, it's Mile High, all right, because I was riding my motorcycle through Denver, and oh my gosh, I was getting high every other block. Everyone's smoking, and in a motorcycle, you breathe, the surrounding air, ambient air. And I was surprised, everywhere I was going, I was smelling pot. Like, wow, this city's really having fun. But I'll explain also about the medicinarians, those for medicine, those for medical use, and those that were for recreational, and how this is laid out. But anyway, this conference, I can't stress how important this is, because this marijuana issue, this cannabis problem, is fascinating because it's bringing together 2 interesting groups. I was on the school bus. I don't know where you guys sat on the school bus, but there's people sat in the front of the school bus, tend to be the smart geeky types that were studying for the physics exam. And then you had the pseudo or nice or cool guys in the back smoking weed and listening comfortably numb on the tunes in the back. And there's always usually this too. And what's fascinating is that this issue of marijuana licensure is almost bringing both sides of the school bus together. You've got the people who studied in the front, who are the physicians, but they were never allowed in the back of the bus. They got beat up, right? And then the people in the back, were all basically thumbing their nose to government in some ways. They were doing things, whether it's recreational or later on for health. This is part of their bones. And I'm not saying that smoking pot obviously means you can't go to medical school. I don't even get there. Carl Sagan, as we know, has smoked every day. But I'm just making the point that these 2 worlds come from different backgrounds often and in social circles. And so we're trying to bridge them together. And that's been very tough. Many of the good physicians who we need to be prescribing cannabis aren't because they're fearful and they're all nervous and all jittery over this. And so what Sarara did was put together, along with her partner, a conference that allows both kind of communities together, and this was aimed for MDs and DOs and naturopathic physicians, licensed as PCPs. So for CME credit, which of course physicians need according to the government, say, we need continuing education credits, as if the free market won't make you a good doctor, but you have to take CMEs. But anyway, this was for CME credit, which was very pricey for doctors, and it was a big risk being put on. It was a fantastic conference. I did attend, met some other doctor friends there, but I just wanted to give you a little heads up of what Sarara has put together from Arizona, and this was in Colorado nationwide. So I look forward to the next conference, and I'll answer any questions also about maybe the experiences and some of the medical issues with the afterwards. But for most of it, I would like to turn over to Sarara, and so give her a big hand. Thanks.
Hello, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning. Did everybody get one of those folders that put together? If you did, let me know. Does everybody have one? This is going to be stuff you can take home with you. There's some pretty good reference information in there. There's a list of websites and links and things that you can look at. There's a booklet, the Mary Jane's Resource Guide, and it gives lots of information, lots of kind of basic information. And what I'm here to talk about today is basically basic information about cannabis. It's going to be kind of a mini version of a course that I teach called Cannabis 101. And Cannabis 101 class can be an hour, hour and a half a day, whole day, depending on how far and wide I spread it. So what I'm going to attempt to do right now is to minimize it, give you the nuts and bolts and the kind of teaser information, and give you enough information that you can walk out of here saying, I didn't know that. So anyway, my background is, as Phranq was saying earlier, I had breast cancer in 2011, and it was pretty much, if I were to say, it was somewhat of a short chapter in my life. The doctors had recommended that I do chemotherapy, radiation, double mastectomy, and 5 years of pharmaceutical aftercare, and of course the reconstruction should I live through all that. And I thanked them for their opinion and said, I think I'm going to find another way to do this. What I'm hearing you say is that I need to shrink this lump small enough that you can remove it as a lump. And the surgeon looked at me like I was completely stupid. And I said, thank you for your opinion. And I proceeded to shrink the lump. I used one of the doctors in Phranq's office helped me considerably, and worked with a homeopath, and I did visualizations and changed my diet, lifestyle, and all that sort of stuff. And so in a matter of 6 months, I was able to shrink the tumor from inoperable to removable as a lumpectomy and move forward with my life. One thing that I learned in the course of all of that was about medical marijuana and how effective marijuana can be in very high concentration for eliminating cancer. Of course, we can't say it heals cancer, and the doctors that are working with it won't say that either. But what it does do is it stops metastasis, it stops proliferation, so spreading, it stops the blood flow to a tumor, and it also teaches the bad cells how to die, which is one of the things that cancer cells don't know how to do. So between all those things, using a highly concentrated cannabis oil can significantly change the situation. Whether you, in this situation, would use conventional therapies with cannabis oil or not, cannabis oil is significantly going to change the situation for you. So anyway, at the time in 2011, cannabis oil was not really an option in Arizona. The law had passed at the end of 2010, and we didn't get dispensaries until 2012 or 2013. So in that period of time, when I learned about it, I got very
how it would be useful and how to get it into people's hands, which I cannot legally do that, but now you actually legally can do that through the dispensary system. So we have actually, through thick and thin, come a long way on making medicine available to people. So anyway, that's kind of my story and how I got into medical cannabis. This table is filled with a variety of unique products. I'm going to go into those in the end. But what I want to start with, I want to tell you just a little bit about the history, because I imagine you guys would be pretty much interested in this. So I'll take a few minutes to kind of go through some of the things that went on that got us in the position we're in right now. Cannabis has been cultivated by human beings for approximately 10,000 years, as long as humans have been cultivating food. It's been used for clothing, medicine, and religious practice for 10,000 years. It's been used in every culture in the world. All the ancient Indo-European language represents, you can find the word canna, which is the root of cannabis, in English, German, Latin, Greek, Persian, and Sanskrit languages. All the peoples of the earth have used cannabis for medicine. In China, the father of Chinese medicine, who's Shen Yun, known as father of Chinese medicine, had cannabis as one of the 50 fundamental herbs in traditional Chinese medicine, and it was prescribed for a broad range of indications. Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, carried cannabis in his medicine bag. It's been used and used and used. It's been medicine forever. It's only been in the last 80 years since the industrialists in this country decided to anodize the heck out of it and scare us with it, that it hasn't been medicine. So, let's see, closer to home, the settlers of Jamestown in present-day Virginia brought marijuana to the U.S. in 1611. It was used not only as medicine, but the hemp plant, which is the sister plant to the marijuana plant, was used for ropes, rigging, canvas, sails, and when the Europeans would come over here on their ships, they'd get here and they'd need to replace all those parts. So hemp was considered the most important economic product in the colonies, so that they could rig these ships so they could get the Europeans out of it. They could go back home. And then in 1750, the colony of Virginia actually imposed penalties on farmers who did not produce hemp. It was that important of a crop that they were required to produce it. George Washington at Mount Vernon used to grow hemp and marijuana. And he's quoted as saying in 1794, make the most of the Indian hemp seed and sow it everywhere. Thomas Jefferson in Monticello in 1815 stated that hemp is of first necessity to the wealth and protection of this country. And he drafted the Declaration of Independence on hemp paper 40 years earlier. Ben Franklin started the first hemp paper mill in the colonies, which allowed Americans to have their own source of paper, not be reliant on England for paper. And in the 19th century, marijuana emerged as mainstream medicine in the West. Studies in the 1840s by a French doctor by the name of Jacques-Joseph Moreau found that marijuana suppressed headaches, increased appetite, and aided people in sleep. By 1850, marijuana had made its way into the U.S. pharmacopoeia. It listed marijuana as a treatment for numerous afflictions, including tetanus, typhus, cholera, rabies, dysentery, alcoholism, opiate addiction, leprosy, convulsive disorders, tonsillitis, insanity, and excessive menstrual bleeding. Now that's kind of a wide range of symptomology. Patented marijuana tinctures were sold in alcohol extract, using the flower tops of the cannabis extracted into alcohol. By 1918, U.S. pharmaceutical farms were growing 60,000 pounds of cannabis annually. That's a lot of cannabis plant that was being used for medicine. So how did we arrive at this place of no longer being able to use this beneficial plant? Well, let's follow the money. Prohibition in North America began with racist and corporate efforts to criminalize cannabis on a national level. First in Canada in 1923 and then the United States in 1937. Corporate efforts to criminalize cannabis were made predominantly by five industrialists, surprise, right? Rockefeller, President Roosevelt, Andrew Mellon, DuPont family, Hearst family. J.D. Rockefeller, America's first billionaire and owner of Standard Oil, successfully eliminated and bought out any potential opponent to the oil industry. Hemp was and is a competitor to the oil industry. It was President Roosevelt who signed the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act into law. Interestingly, he had been on J.D. Rockefeller Jr.'s payroll since his early days in politics. Andrew Mellon owned Alcoa, Gulf Oil, and Mellon Bank, which financed DuPont's takeover of General Motors. And DuPont owned chemicals used by Hearst paper-making factories. So DuPont had other interests too. They wanted to eliminate hemp rope as it was a very successful competitor to nylon, which they had just created. Hearst, an up-and-coming newspaper tycoon in the mid-1920s, intentionally dropped the word cannabis and hemp from his newspapers and began a propaganda campaign against the plant by calling it marijuana. These five men, with Congressman Robert Doughty and Senator Prentice Brown, combined their strength to pass the Marijuana Tax Act with little opposition. The Tax Act was really a prohibition pretending to be a tax. So you can see how a bunch of industrialists got together for their own benefit and took it away from us, basically. To seal the deal and gain public support, the industrialists created this incredibly insane film called Reefer Madness, which many of you have heard of. It basically created that cannabis was an opioid-type drug and made people lose their senses, become violent, and go insane. It was literally created to scare people, and it did. And then in 1942, cannabis was removed from the United States pharmacopoeia and from the doctor's medicine bags entirely, making it illegal for doctors to use cannabis medicine. Imagine how unhappy the doctors were with that. That was a primary medicine for most of the things that people call them. It was at least 50% of the pharmaceutical, of the prescriptions that they were taking care of people with. Just removed it from their tool bag. So where are we at today? Well, starting in the 60s, an Israeli scientist, Dr. Raphael Meshulam, and his team established and developed modern cannabis almost single-handedly. In 1963 and 64, Meshulam and his group discovered and isolated cannabinoids, which are some of the chemical components of the cannabis plant. In particular, they discovered THC, which is the cannabinoid that is responsible for the euphoric effect and the psychoactive effect. That's what gets people high, and that's what most people know about. They also, a year later, discovered and isolated CBD, which is cannabidiol. CBD has absolutely no psychoactive effect. It has many medicinal impacts, like anti-inflammation, helps with sleep, helps with pain, helps with headaches. So CBD and THC have been being studied since the 60s. There's lots and lots of information about these two cannabinoids. And in the 1990s, Meshulam and his partner Deoni isolated from brain matter and intestine first endogenous cannabinoids, which means cannabinoids that the body produces, and I'll explain that in a minute, anandamide and 2-AG. So furthering the science. So this brings us to a discussion of what cannabinoids are. How many people in here take pharmaceutical on a daily basis in this group? That's pretty common. It's a very high percentage of people are on pharmaceutical every day that are basically keeping them alive. Fortunately, those of us that are on pharmaceuticals understand that the side effects can be even worse than what the drug is trying to deal with. So, let's talk about side effects of cannabis. Side effects effects are non-lethal, non-toxic, and not destructive to your organs or your system. And nobody, as Kathy said, nobody has ever died ingesting marijuana. It isn't possible. The body doesn't work that way. Cannabis cannot get to the parts of the brain that control the heart beating or the lungs breathing. You can't stop the heart, you can't stop the lungs, you can't kill it. So cannabis is absolutely non-lethal. Some of the side effects are simply bothersome. They're red eyes, cotton mouth, and munchies. Some of the other side effects can be interruptive, like interrupting motor skills if you get too relaxed. Short-term memory can be affected, and some strains do cause paranoid feelings in some people. So, and I'll explain that a little bit as we go on. But the most common side effect of cannabis is that it makes most people feel better and be happier.
Oh, this is a problem.
We can't have that.
Right.
Yeah,
we
that-
cannot
that-
have that, right?
It's called unwanted euphoria. Yes, true.
This is a real problem.
When was the last time you saw that on a prescription bottle? It's a side effect.
Okay, so for as long as any of us have been alive on this planet, we've been told that this is demon weed and terrible for us. But the fact is that with all this research that's been going on in Israel, there's a lot of data. There's a lot of research. There's research in Spain, there's research in Israel, there's research in the United States that's not being spoken about. There's research in Canada, a lot of research. And the scientific community is communicating with each other. They're working on this together. It's quite fascinating, which is why that conference was so exciting too, because the doctors were able to be together, talk to each other, and advance the medicine just by talking with one another. So if you watch the videos that are available online right now, you're going to see cannabis being used, being smoked, being vaporized in hospitals and nursing homes in Israel. This is medicine that the Israeli government issues to the people that qualify to get it. So here's an interesting thing though. Our NIDA, National Institute of Drug Abuse, and NIH, National Institute of Health, have been the predominant financial supporters of this research that's been going on in Israel for the past 50 years. But because that research was done not on American soil, the data doesn't count.
Because we're the greatest country in the world.
Yeah.
Which is why they paid for it to be done there.
Right.
You say it doesn't count in what? Is that,
It's not considered clinical data. It's the doctors don't regard it as scientific studies in this country. Yeah. So we have to do our own tests, which we're not allowed to do. So I'm not kidding. Let's see. So let's talk about the endocannabinoid system. This is fascinating. Our bodies have developed over the course of time with this plant. As I said, 10,000 years ago, this plant was used for medicine. So what's gone on in our system is we have a neurotransmitter receptor system within our body. We've actually got two of them. We've got something called CB1 and CB2. The CB1 neurotransmitter system goes through the brain, the central nervous system, and helps with seizures. The CB2 system is the peripheral nervous system. It affects most of the organs and the immune system. What these neurotransmitter systems do is they are designed to receive input and receive cannabinoids. It's the endocannabinoid system. So it's designed to receive cannabinoids. Now our body endogenously or internally produces cannabinoids to feed this system and keep us healthy and working right. This system regulates and modulates almost every system in our entire body. And by the way, it's not taught about in medical schools anywhere yet, at all. Not even discussed.
It is in mine. I actually make a point to bring that up now.
That's right, thank you. It's actually 13% of the medical schools somehow mention it, but it is definitely not being taught as a course of study. So we have this endocannabinoid system. We produce cannabinoids to feed the system. When we're out of balance, when we're sick, when we're in disharmony, we don't have enough cannabinoids to feed the system. If we add cannabinoids, whether through smoking, eating, vaporizing, the many ways, and those are the things I'm going to describe over here, the many ways that we're able to bring cannabinoids into our system, what we're doing is fortifying, strengthening, and boosting our internal healing system. This is why cannabis works for so many conditions. It's giving our body what it needs to heal itself. Very interesting, holistic concept, which isn't the way our allopathic medicine is usually working, or thought. So anyway, that's the endocannabinoid system and why this medicine works for us. Let's see. So let's talk about qualifying conditions. In Arizona, all states have different qualifying conditions. There are at present 23 states that have medical marijuana laws. So in Arizona, the conditions are AIDS and HIV, ALS, Alzheimer's, cachexia or wasting syndrome, cancer, Crohn's disease, glaucoma, hepatitis C, muscle spasms including MS, severe nausea, epileptic seizures and other seizures, chronic pain, and most recently, an amazingly smart attorney here got PTSD added. So, chronic pain. Chronic pain is the biggest category by far of card holders anywhere, Arizona and anywhere else. Why is that? Well, it's the biggest reason people need medical marijuana. People of all ages and all socioeconomic levels have severe chronic pain issues. And many people are on strong pharmaceuticals for it, so it helps people to not have to be on the pharmaceuticals. Our soldiers, our young men and women, many of whom are severely wounded in service, are in constant pain. That's why we have such a high percentage of people under the age of 40 that have their card. It's not just that they want to get stoned. These are the people that have fought the wars. They've been in football games. They've been building buildings. They've been in construction. It's not a scam about people wanting to get high. If they wanted to get high, they'd do that on the street. So, elderly are dealing with aches and pains from a lifetime of bumps and bruises. Moms, kids, husbands, wives, anybody. So, if you happen to have cancer, or you know anybody who has cancer, please do talk to me afterwards, because I'd really like to help you understand more about what the possibilities are for that. And even something like skin cancers can be handled with some topicals. So we can talk about that as well. Cannabis is helpful and useful for the symptoms that come with chemotherapy and radiation. But it is also, as I mentioned earlier, helpful for the cancer itself. So now you're a little bit super smart about cannabis and how this could work for you. The way to get marijuana in Arizona is to apply for a card, which you get through your doctor, and then an evaluation center. They mail you a card, and there are legal dispensaries set up. Right now, there's about 90 of them. Some of them are very recreational oriented. They really don't know much about the medicine, but there are 3 or 4 of them that are highly qualified to help you with real medical conditions. So I'm happy to share with you which ones those are if you guys are interested in that. A good dispensary is going to be a safe and comfortable environment. It's going to be discreet, and they're going to treat you with dignity and respect and help you with what you need. So it's actually, from the perspective of something regulated being done well, I would say that the medical marijuana system in Arizona is done pretty well. There's some glitches with the law, and it's not perfect, and there's a lot of stuff still being fought out. But as a patient, you can definitely get help working with a dispensary in Arizona. So, let's see. There are stigmas that come with the fact that it's been illegal for so long and demonized for so long. experience, didn't like it, couldn't stand it, felt horrible. Maybe we had situations with our children, where the kids got in trouble with marijuana, got, ruined their life, whatever, big fights internally in the household. Lots of reasons for stigma. It's very important to get enough education to get over that, because that was propaganda and we were set up. So, for some of you, you may have experienced cannabis as a gateway to higher consciousness. Many people do. Though for others, it's a gateway to, oh my gosh, when will this experience be over? So there's reasons for the difference in the response. Part of the reason is that there are thousands, literally thousands of strains of marijuana now. Originally, there were two main categories. There's a category called indica, which you can think of as indicouch, because it's very relaxing, very introspective, very quieting, you have deep conversations with somebody, calming, helps you sleep. There's another category called sativa. Sativas are uplifting, they're more of what you would think of as a high. You can be focused, you can be really creative. And then there are thousands of hybrids where some of the best of each have been taken and crossed together. There are downsides to each of those. With the indica, you might feel a little unmotivated, you might feel a little lazy, you might feel tired when you didn't want to be tired. With the sativa, your heart might race, you might feel paranoid. So the hybrids are generally a really good way to go because they do read out some of those things. So some of the experiences you might have had could be related to either a strain that you didn't like that didn't work well with your chemistry, or it was simply bad weed from the street, because that was what was available before. The medicine you get from a dispensary is an entirely different matter. In the packet that I gave you, you'll see a resource sheet, and on that resource sheet lists, is that a question? On that resource sheet, you'll see things like a CNN program called WEED. If you guys haven't seen this program called WEED, it was put together by Dr. Sanjay Gupta. In August of 2013, he came on television and he said, I need to apologize to the nation and the world for having been part of the propaganda, and I am sorry, I have learned and I'm going to tell you about it. And a week later, there was an hour-long documentary called WEED. You can see it on YouTube, it's a full-length video. And he shows several stories. There's a young man with spasms that stop instantly, and the most heart-opening story is about a 3-year-old epileptic child called Charlotte. And a medicine was made for Charlotte in Colorado that is high in CBD and low in THC. So to refer back to what I was saying a little while ago, THC is psychoactive, CBD is not. So with all this cross-hybridization, there is now a very focused effort to create high CBD strains of medicine to help people who need the CBD, need the THC, but really don't want to get high. It's definitely not about getting high. So in some illnesses, like cancer for instance, you must have some THC with the CBD in order to get the healing effect. And the CBD modulates and regulates the psychoactive impact of the THC. So there are now, I know of maybe 6 or 8 high CBD strains that are just starting to be grown all over the place. So medicines are starting to be made from them.
Sir, are you taking questions as you proceed, or should we wait till the end?
I'll take them at the end if you don't mind. Thanks for asking. So anyway, so now you know that there are different types of strains of marijuana and they do different things for you. So that brings us to the subject of how to medicate without getting a buzz. So the high CBD strains are really the way to do that, and depending on what your situation is, sometimes there's no need for THC at all. So another way to get high CBD without THC is through the hemp plant that I referred to earlier. And there are many nice medicines that are made from hemp that will give you your pain relief, will let you sleep, will help you relax, will help with headaches without any psychoactive effect at all. Additionally, hemp, because the THC is so minute in there, hemp is not regulated like marijuana. It's still considered a Schedule I drug, but nobody's paying any attention to it. We're shipping hemp all over the country. There's many, many products made. So it's pretty much available. And I'm going to go over here to this table here and show you some of the, well, it's one of the things I want to talk about before I do that. But when I do get over here, I'm going to be talking about some of the different ways to ingest the products. So the last thing I really want to cover is what is recreational use. Recreational use may be another way of saying adult use. In my mind, that would be a much more accurate way to describe what people are doing with marijuana. It's not particularly about wanting to get stoned. It's about self-medicating. We're adult human beings. We have the right to take a Tylenol. We have the right to take a Valium. We have the right to take Ambien, Nesta. We have the right to take a whole bunch of pharmaceuticals because we know we need it at that time. Why do we not have the right to take one hit or one mint or one capsule legally to take care of our medical issues? So, from my point of view, recreational use equals adult use, and that is something we need to have the right for. Okay, I'll share with you that for me personally, deliberate and thoughtful use of cannabis has absolutely indeed saved my life a number of times during really low periods of time. It's been helpful for depression. It was helpful in recovering from cancer. It was helpful with breakups and financial messes and all the things that people go through, to just be able to change my point of view, to sit down at the end of the day, take a hit of marijuana, and just figure it out. So,
And
I'm
not wake up
available.
in an alley.
That's right. That's right. No alcohol, no opiates, none of that stuff. So, anyway, so now let's talk about some of these other ways of ingesting. This pamphlet here shows 115 different types of edible products that are made by a company called Pixie Elixirs in Colorado.
Is there one in the package?
What's that?
Is there a brochure pamphlet in the package?
No, there's not. This is, yeah, and you can't get it here anyway because these are THC products, so they can't ship them. But it just kind of gives you an idea of what some of the possibilities are. They have what they call hot soda, they have candies, tinctures, capsules, bath salts, lots of things. So,
I have one question about
Yes.
this.
yes,
You get stopped at the border of Colorado coming into any other state that borders it, saying, hey, what kind of products do you have that are marijuana involved?
no,
Oh, I'm just curious.
but there is a lot of trafficking and you wouldn't be stopped, but he might be. I mean, it's more probably a profiling kind of thing.
Doesn't have so much to do with crossing state lines, it's just like, profile.
Random.
Career profile, yeah, so it's not really,
Rather
nothing about,
than enhancement.
yeah, nothing
Yes.
about crossing
Like
the,
when, so I can start bringing it in.
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're
We
not
can
at
talk
any
about
greater
that.
risk of bringing it, crossing state lines than you would be anywhere else, on the chemical, but.
We don't need to be talking about this, that's inspiring.
Right?
But yeah, there's a lot of people being stopped in the bus, obviously, for sure. But the airports are really not checking people. So, okay, so, some of the ways that marijuana can be ingested. We all know that smoking is possible. And just to address the point about lung damage and cancer and carcinogens, etc., when I was speaking earlier about the CV2 receptor system, we have receptors right in our lungs. That when we smoke marijuana, actually heals our lungs. It has been documented and proven that there is no higher incidence of lung cancer for people that smoke a lot of marijuana over people who smoke nothing. Nothing. So, while the doctors are all kind of in a panic about don't smoke, that's kind of short-sighted, but we'll give it to them. There's other ways to get it into the body. If the doctors don't want you to smoke, but they're willing to let you take it, do whatever you want to do. But anyway, so there's many ways to smoke. This is a glass pipe. You would put the medicine right in the bowl and light it up. This is something called a bullet, which is a really tiny pipe, so it's discreet. This is something you put water in, it's a bubbler. This is a tiny little version of a bong, so you put water in there and the medicine in there. This is something called a one hitter, so you just load it up and easy to carry it. Pipe cleaner is very important. Glass cleaner, very important. There's always the famous joints, and there's ways to roll them. This is a joint rolling device. So you put the medicine in there, roll it up. These are papers. This is very funny. A container for carrying. It looks like a battery. So you want to, if you happen to be using the medicine and you need to travel with it, this is a nice way to do it because it's undetectable. This is a very interesting device. This is a portable vaporizer, so I guess I'm now moving to the vaporizer part of things. It has, this is a battery, and this part here is a cartridge filled with oil. It's a highly concentrated oil. It's the marijuana oil. So this is an e-cigarette. For understanding, it's an e-cigarette, but the cartridge is marijuana. This is a really nice way for somebody to be able to medicate if they're at work or just in public and for whatever reason need to medicate. And you can now get these from some of the dispensaries in Arizona. Vaporizer. So, if a doctor's telling you not to smoke marijuana directly, and he talks about vaporizing, this is a tabletop version of a vaporizer. So you turn it on, you adjust the temperature, you put the medicine in this glass bowl here, put the bowl on it, and then you suck off the hose. What it does is it leaves all plant material and all carcinogens away from your body. So what you're inhaling is just simply the medicine. So this is a really, really smart idea.
Just out of curiosity, how does that work? How does it, do you know the process?
I don't actually know. I don't know. Maybe I'll know next time. Sorry. But yeah, so it just somehow leaves the plant material like pretty much intact. It just takes the medicine off of it.
In a nutshell, it heats the vegetable matter to a point where the moisture in it, enough to where the moisture in the plant is released in the form of vapor, but not enough heat to where it combusts it like you would if you were smoking it. So with that vapor, as the moisture leaves the plant, it carries with it the cannabinoids, so that without any process of combustion, which is where the carcinogen concerns come in anytime you combust.
That's a great explanation.
So that would probably lead it to one of these really, really rich super brands of bud, because that vapor would just come right off the end of it.
Yeah, it actually delivers more THC per quantity than smoking. So, because in the process of smoking it, you actually destroy some of the active ingredients. The vapor preserves it.
What temperature does it?
I don't know, I can't remember, but there's this, most like the vape pen, it's built in, you don't sound like something you have to adjust, like,
Right, this has some adjustments.
you gotta use that one, you can fine tune it.
Yeah. Thanks for asking.
So,
No, thank you. So vaporizing, some of the other ways that this can be brought into your body, this is a transdermal patch. So it's made in Colorado, we cannot get these in Arizona yet, but these patches, you stick them on soft tissue and they will go into your body in a very evenly dosed, predictable way. This is the sort of thing that the doctors are really looking for, so that they can actually prescribe to somebody. You take a quarter of that patch, 6 hours later you take another quarter patch, and they're making patches out of CBD, they're making it out of THC, they're also making it out of something, this is kind of another subject, but when you do not heat marijuana, you do not activate the THC. So if you can get unactivated marijuana into your system, you can get the benefit of THC without the psychoactivity. It's called THCA, THC acid, which is a precursor to THC. You can get, in some cases, capsules. And this is a wonderful delivery system. It's a tincture. You can get a tincture either in a spray or a dropper bottle. So the medicine is suspended either in a glycerin, which is a sugar-type liquid, or alcohol. And this goes into your body pretty fast and is very effective. Many of the hemp products, the hemp CBD products, are available in this delivery system. This is a salve, a topical. The topical is wonderful for so many things. Joint pain, muscle pain, headaches, rub it right on your temples, skin issues, burns. If you burn yourself, you put it on a burn, and it takes the pain away immediately. Totally amazing stuff. And this is from hemp. For skin cancer, there's products that we have to have a little bit of THC in it that you put topically. It will definitely change the situation of the skin. These are, interestingly, this is hemp seeds. You can eat them. You can buy them at Sprouts. They come in a bag. This is hemp protein. These things will not make you high.
Is hemp protein sold at health food stores?
Yep. Yeah. This is a chocolate bar that is infused with marijuana. The way this is done is that they generally have score marks on them so you know how much to take. And I'm going to discuss that in just a second. There's something called metamints that are infused with marijuana. This is a wonderful thing. If you've got pain, you have to work, and you have to sit at a desk, you take one of these every couple hours, and you're not high, you're just managing the pain. And then, of course, there's the ever famous Phranq. So, let's talk about these edibles, because this is really, really a big deal. Edibles enter your body, your blood system, your bloodstream differently than smoking. When you smoke, it's going into your lungs, it goes directly to your brain, and you know where you're at in 5 to 15 minutes, even faster sometimes. You just know where you're at, and you're okay, and you do more or you don't, and it's all good. With sublinguals that go under your tongue, that's going to be pretty fast too. You're going to get that pretty much right away. When you consume something through your liver, when you're digesting it, it changes the situation markedly. Never underestimate the potential of an edible. An edible can ruin your day in a really big way. The medicine, the THC converts in the liver from delta-9 THC, which is what we're used to, even if we're not used to it, to delta-11 THC, and this is a different effect. It can be, if it says to take one piece of this to get your 10 milligrams, and you eat 3 of them, you are going to be very sorry. get an extremely unpleasant tripped out experience that you are gonna wanna sleep through if you can. So edibles are something you must be extraordinarily careful with. You start very, very slow, you start with less than they tell you, and if you don't feel anything, try again the next day with more. Don't say, okay, it's been an hour, I'm not feeling anything, I'll just take another piece, because you start spanking that up, and you can totally mess yourself up.
Why do they make it taste so good?
I don't know. That's such a good question. That's really a good point, though, because you say, oh, it's just a brownie. Oh, well, I ate half of it. I know I was only supposed to eat a quarter. Well, don't complain to me. I told you.
Isn't that usually prescribed for people who don't want to eat in the first place?
Edibles, you mean?
Yeah.
Mostly smoking for people who don't have any kind of appetite issue because it's faster acting and it's hard for them to want to eat the brownie, to begin with.
And it really does take a while for it to get into your system.
Yeah.
Edibles are really good for a micro dosing, or if you have steady pain that you're trying to take care of throughout the day. So something like these mints would be a really good idea. It's a wonderful way to do it, where you're just steadily taking care of things. But when you eat a piece of an edible, don't be fooled. It's not candy. It's not annoying. Anyway, that's pretty much what I wanted to say. I'd like to answer any questions anybody's got. Let's start right now.
Okay, yeah. Where is the research now on the THC, the fat part of THC, that lodges in on the transmitter, that can interfere with, the electrical jump? Do you know anything about that, of where the research is? Because the last research that I read is that the THC can lodge itself on the neurotransmitter. And it's a fact. And it can interfere over a period of time into where you develop islands of liquidity.
Islands of what?
Liquidity. In other words, you go, instead of going A, B, C, you go AC.
I haven't heard
Don't
anything
know.
about that. Do you have any?
Well, what he's talking about is what happens is that the whole reason you take fish oil, for instance, if you have diabetes or neuropathies, your nerves are basically like a copper wire, and you have a plastic coating on the outside to insulate the copper to keep the charge through. So people have neurodegenerative diseases like ALS or diabetes. You give them the three components that make up the casing: B6, vitamin B12. That's why people get B12 shots for energy. But the third ingredient is omega-3 fatty acids. That's fat. Fat is just like plastic. It makes up the coating around the nerve impulse. So normally you want that, and hence the omega-3s are fine. What he's referring to, and I'm not necessarily substantiating that that's a problem yet, but what they're looking into is that this can be fat soluble as well, this oil, and the oil could get in and kind of take the place of some of these omega-3s and maybe create a problem in the charge, the electrical current, because it's not making a fluid coating.
Yeah.
Now, again, I'm not saying it's just hypothesized, but that's what he's talking about as far as oils and fats and nerve conduction.
Yeah.
So that's not for me.
Because what this came out of UCLA. And this was like way back in the late 70s. And it was a 10-year study. This was the downside, I think, is what they were showing. And so I was wondering where the research was on that, because
I don't know, but I think if they could prove that to any demising, if they could prove that to us,
but he answered the question.
okay. I mean, I think they'd be jumping on that if that was something that
Yeah, that's
was really dangerous to us.
After 40 years.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
The strains.
Yes,
Okay. All the ones that have less THC and no CBD.
yes,
Is that accomplished through a
yes, it is.
So,
Exactly.
in order to get the higher CBD and the lower THC, we have to take a GMO.
Well, not
No,
genetically.
no.
Selectively bred.
Yeah, it's hybridization, not genetic
Well, that's,
modification.
see,
Yeah.
that makes a world of difference.
Yes,
But,
yes.
If you're gonna be freaked out about GMOs,
Yeah, right,
you don't wanna be doing GMOs.
right. Yeah, no, it's hybridization, like the thousands of other things that are created along the way. That's really good question. Next. Yeah.
And, Ebola is in the news, is there anything that could be done with Ebola or anything, or taking it off, or boosting the immune system?
Well, I don't know exactly, but I know that CD2 is immune system. Yeah, the CD2 receptors are throughout the immune system. I have a friend who works in a hospital environment, and she actually regularly gets MRSA. And she has been through, she will take her $300 worth of antibiotics and all kinds of other treatments to get through it. And recently, when she had it, she took a salve, a THC salve. She said for the first 3 days, it continued down its normal path. It looked like it was going as it usually did. And then all of a sudden, it started to retreat. She was able to deal with her MRSA with no antibiotics and no pharmaceuticals. And a friend of mine who has had serious sinus and lung infections, anytime he gets a cold, he has to take antibiotics for the last 10 years. He's been on very strong CBD medicine and a little bit of THC, and this last time, he did not have to do antibiotics. That's just some minor stories.
A couple parts of this question. I really checked emails, so last night when I was blowing through a bunch of emails, I thought I saw a title on one email that was referencing this meeting this morning, and it said something about Will Humboldt, who I think is the head of the Arizona Department of Health, is supposed to be here. Does anybody know anything about that? Okay. Will Humboldt, if I remember correctly, he's one of these staunch drug warriors who, even in the face of massive research showing that veterans with PTSD benefit remarkably from medical marijuana, he is just adamant about preventing any state or federal funding for PTSD vets getting medical marijuana. Can you comment on that? Or can anybody else comment on that?
I'll make a little comment, and then we'll let you take it over from here. My comment on that is that he's an ignorant man.
Thank you. And is his last name, is it Humble or Humboldt?
Humble. Will Humble. Yeah,
Humble?
Humble, no DT or D or T, just humble.
Humble.
Will, now I'm getting mixed up. Will Humble without any.
Okay.
Yeah. I believe it's right.
He's-
That was gonna be
he's-
too ironic. That was gonna be too ironic if he was Humboldt. Yeah, exactly.
But he's been an enemy to the cause from the beginning. He's just trouble.
So the question about, yeah, you're right, PTSD, it wasn't there's two things that happened there. One was there's several $1 million sitting in an account that's been collected from the sale of medical marijuana cards by the government. It's about $8 million now or something like that. And it's been set aside. After a long time, Sue Sicily, a doctor from Arizona that recently was fired from ASU or U of A, whose contract wasn't renewed, I think for political reasons, but had amazingly, for the first time, obtained the federal government's permission to conduct studies for PTSD research. And someone came up with a brilliant idea, really, that we would use that money that's just sitting there to fund the study. That way we didn't have to use any taxpayer dollars. It passed the House by like 50, almost unanimously. I think there was 4 votes that said no. It landed on Kimberly Yee's desk, the Senate chair of the Senate Education Committee, and she refused to put it on the agenda. So in effect, single-handedly killed it. So that's what spawned like a recall campaign against her for a while. and so forth. But then separately over at the Department of Health Services, there were applications every year made to add PTSD to the list of conditions that medical marijuana could be recommended for. And every year that Will Humble would announce, there's no reliable peer-reviewed studies that satisfy our conditions of scientific accuracy that makes us think we should need to add PTSD. So an attorney, Ken Sobel from Tucson, who is actually also a dispensary owner down there, filed a challenge to that and said, you don't get to set the standard. It says that you have to consider all the evidence, including patient testimony, anecdotal evidence, animal studies, whatever. You have to consider all that in determining whether or not there's a basis for adding it. The courts upheld him. Will Humble. One thing Will Humble is a good bureaucrat, and he will do what he's ordered to do. Even if he personally doesn't agree with it. And he was ordered to implement. He then decided to add PTSD, but he did it in such a way that he said that if marijuana is used for the treatment of PTSD, but if a physician recommends the use of marijuana for the treatment of PTSD, or PTS as a lot of people prefer to call it, he must also prescribe conventional therapies at the same time. So then now we're back in court. Again, Ken Sobel's bill kind of leading the charge on that and trying to remove those restrictions. Like, what power does Will Humble have to add this new, extra rule about PTSD medical marijuana use for PTSD treatment? So yeah, he's definitely anti, but he does obey. He's good at obeying orders. So he's a good bureaucrat. The trains run on time over at the Department of Health Services.
Okay, Johnson. Humble is there.
I didn't know Humble was Italian.
So is there anything, okay?
You're here in Arizona?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I can find out, connect with your organization on the website there.
Absolutely, and I've got my business cards here to hand out.
Oh,
And I
great.
do this class, Cannabis 101 Anywhere. We get maybe 8 people together, we can do a class.
Great.
And I do private consultations, so,
Okay, I got an observation and another question.
yes.
My observation is when I saw Reefer Madness, I don't know, 40 years ago.
Can you speak up, please?
When I saw Reefer Madness 40 or some odd years ago, I realized that the term marijuana is a stigma term.
Right.
It's a word that is designed to act exactly like the word nigger is used.
Right, right,
It's a denigrating term.
yes.
Why did you use it in your speech?
Because it's very commonly recognized, and the law in Arizona is the medical marijuana law.
Well, it's a semantic shift that I would urge everyone to make the semantic shift. Don't use their words.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
Don't use their semantics,
Right.
and therefore you avoid their logic.
Right.
It's but that's a different.
Well, it also doesn't, the word doesn't have any power unless we give it power.
And a lot of people are trained in it. That's all. That's the problem.
It's like
Social engineering.
That's a good.
It's like squaw peak. Squaw was a very derogatory word,
Yes.
and so they changed. I don't like the new name they gave it, but I mean that was the reason why. One of the reasons why they changed it was. And you're absolutely right. If you're playing in their game and you're using their words, you lose.
Yeah.
But we're not in their game.
We are in their game. They've placed us in their game because they got the guns.
But what specific words and phrases are you suggesting that we not use here?
The word marijuana.
The word marijuana, cannabis.
There's lots of words, but that's a big one.
An herb.
That's a big one.
Okay, just, I didn't mean to criticize.
No,
That's a
it's
good
understandable.
point. It's a
And-
great
Welcome
point.
to the Breakfast Club.
And this is something that's been discussed in the industry ad nauseum.
It should be discussed more because there's too many people pushing marijuana.
Right. How are we gonna get the state to change the law to medical cannabis?
Okay, my question is, I guess you almost already answered it, but I've got a dog that's got a Chief. It's underneath the skin. In your knowledge, and I've been trying to figure out how to solve it, and would stop its growth with a variety of protocols. It would stop its growth, and we even tried some homemade cannabis oil.
Yeah.
But it probably wasn't from the right strain, because this homemade cannabis oil failed to work on another dog, and definitely failed on my dog. But it was psychoactive, active enough that the dogs don't like psychoactive stuff. They just disappear into their little hidey hole, and you never see them. That's it. No, they don't like it. So I suspended that. It didn't work, and he was not a dog anymore. He was a potato on the couch. But so my question is are you familiar enough to know that there's any kind of tincture? I don't think a salve would work because it's underneath the skin. You have to get in through the skin and directly onto that tumor. Do you know if there's any tincture that has a broad-based, not high in CBD and no THC? I don't want the stuff that you can nail with.
Right.
I know that stuff won't work.
Right, because you need some THC.
Yeah, exactly right. That's what the researchers are telling me.
Right, right.
Is there such a
We can
problem?
talk about that
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say, we're over time a little bit. Phranq still has a few words he'd like to say. If you have any questions for Sarara afterwards on an individual basis, I'm sure she'll be hang around. So, Phranq, if you want to.
Very good, friends, and,
So I'm just going to do just a quick follow-up, just summarize a few points and maybe add some other things I can see. Sir, you're from the back of the bus, I can tell. Yeah?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I was a little bit, like I said, in both when I was growing up. And kind of probably half and half. And that's kind of got me in this position in a sense. A few things I wanted to point out. First of all, I mentioned before I focused on prostate cancer, but this issue of cannabis, I have the interesting habit of basically taking something on for an entire year. I don't know why it is by design. This last year was my motorcycle. Another year were all my firearms. I had my whole arsenal done in about 1 year. Every lesson years ago. I just tend to immerse myself, get it down, and then interconnect with other hobbies and move on to something else. So somehow I guess the cannabis thing has turned into this without me looking for it. So my whole point is simply to help out the movement here because it has so many different components. As a patient, for patients that have access to this type of medicine, for Americans in general, and also the problem is I find doctors are becoming the worst enemy for this here in Arizona. All right. Now, one of the things I found is Seattle is as liberal as it gets. Gosh knows I see patients there and I have to come back and take a bath. I just can't. It gets to me too much in Seattle. Texas, of course, is the antithesis, all conservative. Colorado is liberal because it's close to Seattle together, and it's liberal libertarian. Arizona is conservative like Texas, but we're conservative libertarian. And I think it's why Colorado and Arizona have this interesting brotherhood, even though we have different backgrounds. The difference, though, is right now, of course, because of that letter, what is the letter President Obama wrote years ago and kind of basically said hands off? What exactly was
Eric
that?
Holder wrote, as the Attorney General, that basically announced a non-enforcement policy so that if you're in compliance with state law,
Right.
the Federal Controlled Substance Act won't be enforced against you.
You guys aware of that? How many of you guys are aware of that?
yeah, but they know.
So how many of you guys are aware of that? Okay, so half of you are. Let me just explain what basically was going on in a nutshell. Is that every time states would pass these laws saying cannabis was legal for medicinal uses, then of course people got involved. Sometimes it would be hammered down by the feds, who would say that, since the Civil War, of course, that the federal government trumps the state rights. And therefore it kept other doctors and other people from getting involved in investing money to do so. This has been the quandary that they've had. And so therefore, that's what's kept a lot of doctors out. Even though they passed it in Arizona, they're still afraid that the feds are going to come in and say it's still illegal under federal law, and you just lost your $250,000 medical education. So this is what's holding this thing up. So Eric Holder, forgetting the whole, how much we love the conventional political system, but Eric Holder at least had this note that went out that said, look, During this time, we have bigger fish to fry in other areas politically to put our weight and our resources. Let's not go after states that have licensed it or made it legal and not waste our resources going after them. So, during Obama's first 4 years, and now another 4 years, it's basically kind of kept that cloud out from businesses trying this out. It's also giving both these industries 8 years to get themselves entrenched, both legally and also paying a lot of tax money to these states and cities that don't want to lose it, right? Colorado is certainly feeling it. So this is what's interesting. Of course, it also shows what's going to happen in the next election, because if this country swings like it sometimes does, ultra-conservative, and we get, Rubio or whoever else, they may turn around, they may turn around, and this might have a conservative swing and go against the tide for all these companies that have gone forward. Of course, if a liberal gets in, or Rand Paul or libertarian, of course, I'm sure this will not be a problem, but I'm just throwing little political overtones of what this letter has done, and it's uncapped this industry. That's why you're seeing this explosion. There's a reason why. It's like when everyone started buying homes all of a sudden, and they didn't buy them before. There's a reason why. The Keynesians didn't understand it, but there's a reason why you see a spike, and that's what we're seeing now. So anyway, what's happening though is that here in Arizona, a lot of these doctors, young doctors, don't have the protection of the legislature as they do in Colorado. So in Colorado, if doctors overprescribe, they have a liberal libertarian state. Here it's conservative libertarian, and so the conservative base here, when they hear the Fox News peeps talk about how medicinal marijuana is going to ruin this country, well, that's kind of the legislature here, more conservative. And so when doctors screw up here, it's just ratcheting up the reasons why the Republicans here are, basically they can backfire in Arizona. So I'm making it kind of a mission to talk to these medical students, stop them from making these mistakes. As I said earlier, the physicians that have some credibility are not going into this. The doctors that are those that are poor, can't pay back their loans, especially with the issues we have now with the economy, and of course with cash-based doctors. A lot of them become what we call pet physicians. And they become pet physicians of franchisees, things like testosterone clinics, hypothyroid clinics, Botox centers. Okay, these are centers where business people run these, and they find doctors that are on kind of having a real rough time paying back their loans, and they're basically And so that's what's happening now with these new marijuana cannabis clinics. And unfortunately, these doctors are getting, overprescribing and making kind of a mockery of the system that is in place for all of us. So I just wanted to let you guys know, I think it behooves us to make this more mainstream as much as possible, and especially for the medical community. So again, what Sarara did, I thought was a great job trying to open this up. I wanted to mention something else that Sarara said, and some of you already know this, especially sir, what is your name?
Michael.
Michael, thank you. I'm sure Michael already knows this. He's in the back of the room as well, like the back of the bus. There we go. But here's something. I wanted you to point something out. Some of you may not understand how profound this is. And we'll talk about orgasms in just a minute to show you how profound this is. Imagine in my medical school class. But here's the thing. The CB1 receptors. These are receptors that the body has organically. Okay, this kind of, you hear it sounds academic. You can understand how profound this is. Anything you take, alcohol, opioids, other types of painkillers, drugs, these are drugs that are looking for a receptor. It's like lock and key. And when the key finds the lock, if it matches, then you get the effect. Okay? The more that key fits the keyhole, the more effect you're going to have, and the fewer side effects you're going to have, because that keyhole was made for that key. Okay? When you have a keyhole that doesn't have the right markings to it, or it's not the right kind, and you take a key and try to shove it through, and I did it once on my other car, and I just had a problem. Like, this key should work, right? And you create a problem. Well, that's what happens when you take chemicals that are not designed for your body, like alcohol. Okay, it's not supposed to work in these keyholes, and the more you try and push them in, you get side effects, whether it's nausea, or your liver's got to finish up the problem afterwards, and your alkaline phosphatase levels go up. I mean, side effects of, you guys I'm sure experienced some of these. Cannabis doesn't have these side effects. Cannabis has this molecule, which we won't get into the chemistry at this point. has a molecule that is perfectly made for a receptor, a keyhole, in the body, in your cells. I mean, it's astounding. Now, for those of you, whether this is evolution or not, I'm in an evolutionary debate, so I'll tell you what. You know, either evolution really does exist, and if so, if it does really function, which I believe it does, it's no science, but anyway, it's just me. But if evolution does exist, this is an interesting question. How did cannabis evolve with us at such an early time? And as Sarah was mentioning earlier in the history, at least 10,000 years. Somehow we've evolved these receptor sites. Or, if evolution did not happen, that means God really likes cannabis. Just put it that way. Because he maybe gave us these receptor sites. And this is very unique. This is why you're able to have, whether it's a high, whether it's about the pain relief, and not have these side effects, not have the addiction component, not have anyone die from this. That alone, I have to be honest, I was not involved in this realm at all, but it was that fact alone, and I learned during our first medical marijuana conference we had in our medical school, the first and only time, because they were scared. When they had the instructor, it was a botanist, talk about that concept, as a naturopath, that is what opened up my receptors, my ears, to really start to hear, what is it about this plant? And it's been astounding from there. And of course, you hear about, was it not Deepak Chopra, who was the one that, yeah, Gupta, and he says he was wrong about the cannabis, and you're hearing all these Johnny-come-latelys, which is understandable. But I just wanted to explain, for those of you who haven't experienced it necessarily, or don't know what the hubbub is, that there really is something unique about this plant that's profound, and it's not getting across. And when doctors hear this, that's what's really catching their interest. So there's reasons why. They're not lying when they talk about how there's no side effects. It's not just wishful thinking. They don't seem to have them to that degree. Also, a few comments Sarah made, and also the head of Normal from this morning. What was her name? Kathleen. Sorry, I missed her at the beginning. She made a comment about, pharmaceuticals, or too many pharmaceuticals. I have to say, as a naturopath, I don't like, kind of use your view in some ways, of looking at this as where people take too many pharmaceuticals, hence we should look at marijuana or cannabis. I mean, the thing is, herbs are drugs as well, and our foods can be our drugs, and vice versa. It's amazing when I see a patient, if I write a prescription for ciprofloxacin, and I say, or for Viagra, patients want exactly that drug. They don't want a substitution, they want that drug. But if I say take EPA 720 DHA, which is a very specific pharmaceutically distilled fish oil, then patients go, oh, well, it's fish oil? I don't know. I already got fish oil. I get that from Costco. Whatever it is. It's like, wait, this is a medicine, the way this is designed. If I write a prescription, for some reason, subconsciously, there's still this different respect or distance of natural treatments. People do this. And so, same thing. But, cannabis is, again, it's a profoundly powerful plant in different guises. I mean, botanicals have different effects. And yet cannabis has more effects and can do more with less, as far as, and even cheaper in many ways, than conventional botanical medicine. So these are medicines, just like pharmaceuticals. It's just like a tool. It's how you use the tool. One of the last points is as far as the summary. For some of you already know this, some of you don't. I just want to summarize what we're talking about as far as these types of plants and the effects. Let's just keep it simple. There's three. Okay, there's three things. There's CBD, there's two THCs. One's called sativa, one's indica. So what's been happening is this is a weed, and weeds just grow all the time. And just like fruit flies, the reason we do fruit fly experiments is because they reproduce quickly. The more they reproduce, you can get genetic mutations quicker in offspring. So cannabis has been a fantastic plant to do this with. On top of all the other effects and benefits, is that it's a weed and it grows very quickly, and people want to cultivate this. So just like we have chickens and turkeys and all different versions of dogs, it's natural, actually artificial selection through human beings, and that's what we've done with cannabis. So in essence, we've created two general categories. Okay, one is we would consider marijuana, and the other is hemp. Okay, so basically there's two categories. The marijuana part, which is what, again, it's the response that the lay people have, or the politicians. They hear the M word and they go flying and think everyone's, high. But The marijuana plant now, there are two different variations. One is sativa and one is indica. Okay, so these are the two. And so sativa is kind of the one that affects the mind and gives you that high that people are also afraid of, or people, they see in the movies. Indica is the one people often think about or hear about. Indica does not give you the high in the mind as much, barely, but it actually gives you the high of the body. It's sort of like if you do a cat stretch in the morning and you feel good, you get a nice stretch. That whole loosening and tingling of your body, that's kind of the relaxation the nerves are giving your muscles. That's what indica is doing. Okay, so one gives the high of the mind, one is high of the body. That's kind of the best way to describe the two. And there's variations of it there as well. So then, those are the two. And sometimes they mix them up, they can get effects from both. And for cancer treatment, they're finding research having both sativa and indica together. But now you have this whole other category, hemp. And of course, me, myself, being a Johnny-come-lately, hemp was, this is not marijuana, I didn't know what I was talking about. It was like hemp was one of those things, and I guess you can make rope out of it, and maybe get high. I don't know. I was clueless because I was in the front of the bus too much. Anyway, so what happened was, I find out that hemp, the other category, was designed to be more industrial, and also for industrial uses, hence that we use for clothing or for rope and all sorts of things. But also you can extract an oil from hemp, just like sativa and indica. These are oils, just like essential oils. You get rosemary oil from the store. These are oils that you get. Well, the same thing here. You can extract oil from hemp, and that is CBD. So CBD, in essence, is the oil from hemp, whereas sativa and indica are oils that come from marijuana, both of which are, the parent grouping is cannabis. All right? So just kind of, I don't know if this is too basic for somebody, and I apologize, but I just wanted to get this across because it's quite basic in essence, but it gets confusing when people are in this realm, because they talk really quick in jargon, and you kind of maybe not put it together. So anyway, that's what CBD is. So CBD is basically taking indica, which is the body high, and taking away any part of the mind component, and you get just the benefits of what can affect on the body, pain relief, immune enhancement. These are things that indica can do, but now you're stripping away all the mental component and just dealing with the benefits of the body. That's what CBD is, and that is, it's a little more than that. I'm not being exactly technical, but you get the idea. And that's why CBD, if you just look online, CBD is taking the political realm by storm, because the lawmakers who are against marijuana, in their mind, it is the stereotype. And they assume that all this, marijuana, anything's going to give an illicit high, and God forbid we can't have that, right? But CBD doesn't, basically, kind of is like the answer, the middle finger to the groups that they're trying to say marijuana is not something we should legalize, because CBD basically answers every one of their problems, and they don't have an answer for it. And so CBD clinics and dispensaries, or not dispensaries, but manufacturing companies are popping up with all sorts of innovative products like we're seeing here. You mentioned as an example of what to do for a tumor, an outside tumor. Some people are taking CBD and injecting it straight into the tumor, if you can do that. Rick Simpson injection. Now this is not typical, you're not going to find the average doctor do that. Or you could just take one of these patches, it's better than nothing, and put the patch topically over the tumor. Because the transdermal does work differently and drives the CBD in. I may add also, when she was talking about patches and creams and all different ways, for any of you ladies taking estrogen, or the guys taking testosterone, which I prescribe all the time to my patients, if you've taken these hormones for a while, you will recognize that there is a difference. If you're getting your sex hormone from a cream, or an injection, or a lozenge, okay, testosterone, men can tell differences. They get more, anger over this kind, or they get more libido with this form over here. There's different variations. It does absorb differently in the body. It may seem on the surface that they're all the same, but they really are, there's subtle differences, sometimes are profound in our own body chemistries. So sometimes you have to experiment with the patch or this kind or that. So anyway, I just wanted to give you guys a little background. And for some of you in this field, this is all kind of pedestrian, but I know. Yes?
Dr. Phranq, regarding the CBDs, many months ago, National Public Radio did a story specifically about the little girl named Charlotte, whose seizures went from hundreds a month down to like 3 a month, or 3 a week or something like that, because of using CBDs. I think it was Will Humboldt who specifically said, sorry, even though it's proven that this little girl's benefiting, you can't use that stuff. Her family actually had to move to either Colorado or Washington, I can't remember which one. Is that still the case? Do they still have to live there, or has the law been loosened enough that they can move back here and she could use CBD?
Right, I'll answer before I do, Sarara has a comment on that right there. Did you question on
Yeah,
that?
that family came from the East Coast.
Yeah.
Wherever they came
Oh,
from.
okay.
It's Connecticut
They
or
were
something
not
like that,
an
yeah.
Arizona family.
Okay,
So wherever they came from, they went to Colorado and they got to stay there.
okay, okay.
Right.
But what I wanted to comment on is that CBD alone is not the answer. And the states that are making CBD-only laws are making a very big mistake and a big oversight, because CBD alone will not cure not help with cancer much, and certain epilepsies absolutely have to have some THC. So hemp is really not the answer, and CBD laws are not the answer.
And this is
What
one,
they are is an entry point to getting a marijuana
Right.
law in states, so that the laws can be expanded to include THC, because it's not gonna happen, it's not gonna work.
the cannabis community is going through the same problem my naturopathic community is going through, which is people want to be all of a sudden part of Obamacare. Obviously, most of us don't, especially me. But let's just say that aside, those that want to be in Obamacare, they want to be in it. But in order to do it, they have to be licensed quickly in these other states. So instead of going through the licensure program properly to get your full scope of practice, they're willing to sell out all sorts of freedoms for our practice in order to get in the state so they can be under Obamacare. So there's a big debate, and some people saying, well, it's better than nothing, and other people saying, yeah, you're selling out the profession. And there's similar things happening now in the cannabis community, because on one hand, how much do you sell or downplay what they do and what rights you should have in order to more quickly get it on the ballot? And so this is happening state from state, I believe. And CBD, it's a double-edged sword. On one way, it's a gateway for politicians all worried about Reefer Madness, the movie, and that's all they think in their mind, right? That's what they think it is. Well, CBD is a way to just stick it to them and say, no, this is not what you think. And they are starting to wake up to it. The problem, though, is if that's what they think is a safe version, then they're going to say, well, then we're just going to license that. You don't need the rest of it. So that's the danger of getting this message out properly, and that's the advocacy groups that you guys are doing here. On that, the last point, I just want to point as far as the political, is, the conference, and not with Sarara necessarily, but there was a disagreement with the conference. They really didn't want anything to do with politics at all, which I understand. They were trying to focus on medicine. But we're a political group at the same time, and the Colorado case, I have mixed feelings about it. I mean, I really honestly do. I'm not being facetious with it, because many of us are the fighters. We're the ones that fight for the rights. And it's fascinating how many people don't stand for the fight. They don't get involved. And then when all of a sudden things get tough, then they take off, right? And they don't stand there for the fight. And it's very frustrating for many of us, and we all kind of know what we're talking about. We can go on with different examples. If anyone has a right to leave America, it's probably libertarians going down to Panama, because we've been. There's kind of a rule I have, which is before you get a lifeboat up on the Titanic, you're obligated to knock on at least 2 other doors. So if you save 2 other people on your way, I think at least karmically you're doing right, and that's for all sorts of activism that we do. But to sit there and not do anything and then wait when it's and all of a sudden how many of you guys had people throw money at you to buy gold when it started going up the other day? And they never did anything before for the movement or to learn. They just said, quick, buy me gold. And I had that all the time. So that's the type of thing we want to hopefully prevent somewhat. As people are moving, granted, if the child's in pain, I understand, but I think it's important that people now that create these conferences, and as this message goes on, we need to honor those people that have fought this fight. People are still in jail today because of this sorts of thing, right? I mean, when the 2 presidents sit there and do it, and yet people are in prison for it, I mean, there's something really sick with the situation. So I think for those people that have fought that fight, they should acknowledge at these conferences and learn how each state can learn it better. The last question I asked at the conference, they had one speaker who was an attorney, one of the days, and I asked them a question publicly. I said, is there anything that you learned trying to pass this law in Colorado that you would advise differently for other states that are carbon copying what they're doing? Because each state must learn some things that, better ways to phrase and make it easier for the next group, rather than everyone's got their little bubble here. Because it's interesting seeing this change. I went to a dispensary in Colorado when I went to the conference there, and I also just went to Seattle to see patients in my office in Seattle. And I went to one of the first dispensaries there. Wow, is that a night and day difference? Denver has their act together. It's like a full business. You walk in and, I mean, I felt like they've done this before. I mean, they were on clocks, it was organized, it was fascinating. And yet Seattle, which I think passed it around the same time or earlier than Denver, they just opened their first medicinary just 3 months ago. And they had this big outing, which shows you, in a sense, how much government Seattle has. The fact that it took so long to even have their stores open compared to Denver that has it all over. One last thing, I'll start taking questions.
What did he say about,
Who's
what
that?
was the attorney you asked the questions, and what was his?
Oh, he didn't, well, I'll tell you more after. He didn't really have much to say about that specific. I was hoping for some specifics, but he kind of didn't say a lot there, unfortunately. But I think that's something that should be having discussions at these conferences and in groups. But anyway, it was fascinating to see the difference. I would just tell you, if the medicinaries here, feel free to walk in. It's not a scary place. I'm not sure if you can go in the back without a card. I don't think you can, but you can at least, if you do get a card, or if it does become recreational, you can just walk in with just a driver's license and take a look around. I was very fascinated with the products and the professionalism of what they had as medicines. So anyway, thanks for just entertaining a few topics at the end I thought you guys might benefit from. Sir, yeah.
Okay, a couple of questions here, and an observation. Observation first. Seattle, actually Washington State,
Yes.
they did it under the Liquor Control Board,
Yes.
which was, and is, and will ever be a bureaucratic nightmare. That's what
Yes,
they did wrong.
that's the problem.
So they're trying to control the zoning and, all this stuff. The question is, is there any research underway in terms of the benefits of modest consumption of cannabis as a longevity enhancer? In other words, helping to extend the lifespan. I just point to all of Mick Jagger, who still falls around. He was a 20-year-old. I mean, come on.
Right.
I'm just wondering if there's any serious research that's being proposed or underway.
I have not, and if you guys have, let me, did you research on that, this very specific point? There is something I was going to mention on that, though.
It's known to enhance brain function. And studies that have been done on people that have been users for decades these people are in much better condition than people that have not used it.
Oh, yes, I know that.
Yeah,
I really know that.
So
I have not heard any study where smoking is going to decrease or create some health effects. So you can almost answer that question in reverse. But one thing I'd point out, this is fascinating, not about cannabis, but about pipes. It turns out that you have cigar smokers, cigarette smokers, pipe smokers, and non-smokers. Would you know that the cigarette smokers' highest cause of death of heart disease, and then above that, not as bad as cigarettes, is cigars. And then, of course, you would think pipes, but it's not. It's non-smokers. It turns out smoking a pipe, you have less of a chance of a heart attack with a pipe than you do non-smokers. It's a small margin, but it is margin of error. And the reason they think it is because you're smoking a pipe, you're not breathing it into your lungs. And when you smoke a pipe, it's mainly relaxation. It's sort of like being an Einstein or someone just sitting back with a pipe. And it seems that the relaxation is actually helping the heart more than the little bit of tobacco. So it could be maybe along those lines that cannabis could be helping longevity simply by relaxation, reducing blood pressure. But as far as long-term study, I haven't seen that yet. It'll be interesting. Well, look, thanks for, one last question.
Yeah, Dr. Phranq, thank you very much. And before I ask the question, I've got to say, whenever you say that Arizona is a conservative/libertarian state, my head wants to explode. Other than the issue of gun rights, Arizona is just dyed in the wool, straight down the line, hardcore conservative radicals. Anyway, you being a doctor, I think you would you would be able to answer this question. The Arizona Republic, being the bastion of statism that they usually are, they recently had their 4 opinions on the bottom of the opinion page. And the question was, should the United States follow the advice of former Mexican President Vicente Fox and legalize marijuana? Well, 3 of the 4 responses were hardcore. No, Mexico's got so many problems, we don't turn to Mexico, blah, 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 blah. And one person actually said that smoking marijuana is an equivalent amount of marijuana to tobacco is 40 times worse for the lungs than smoking an equivalent amount of tobacco. And that dirt track driver, Ken Ward, who was recently killed by Tony Stewart, he had enough marijuana in his system to be legally impaired for doing anything, operating anything dangerous, driving, and so forth. In your opinion, as a real doctor, what do you think about this notion that smoking pot is 40 times worse for the lungs than tobacco, and that it's horrible for operating machinery and driving and so forth?
Well, in all fairness, I have looked into that, but not as much to comment as your politely is calling me a real doctor, at least today somewhat. I'm kind of not in uniform, so it kind of depends on the day. But I do understand what you're getting at. I have to say I've sort of played the wait and see. I mean, I know Sarara and Normal probably disagree with those accounts. I have heard that as well. And as a physician looking at carcinogens and gotchas, I see them all day looking for prostate cancer. You'd be amazed what I see as far as cancer or carcinogens and risks, things that people don't know when I start seeing links later on. However, even if that would be the issue, they have gone so beyond the smoking, whether it's using a vaporizer or using topicals. There's so many other ways to get it that it's almost becomes a moot point if that's their best shot is because of that. Well, then we'll find other ways. You know, the only reason they're smoking it is because they made it illegal. You make it legal, we'll find other ways to do it, just like the pharmaceutical companies did. Because that's the only reason they're smoking it, for God's sake. Otherwise, heck, you make Prozac illegal or start smoking those and make a joint some Prozac. I'm sorry, I guess we're done. I'll take other questions afterwards.
We do need to wrap it up for those of you that need to go, but I'm sure Phranq and Sarara.
I can hang out here. Well, thanks again for your time.
Yeah, we can talk about this all day. It's really a lot of good information.
Get 2 tickets out of it. You know, we'll pass the hat. You guys, most of you around here know what's going on, right? Okay, this is the drawing of the book over here on the table. First choice is 7860. 7860. Is that you?
Got to hear what?
Yeah, I'm close.
You have something? We have a winner? Got to hear what?
7862. 7862. 7862.
Who cares?
Only twice?
7864. We got one.
Where's the books at?
Where's the hat at? We got the hat.
She's got a great service.
Here it is. Pick your.
To call in professionally, explain what is this whole thing about kind of how to sell us and more personalized to them, and show them here is the links of the chain. Here's how you get a card. Here's your dispensary. Hold your hand, and that's a great service. Doctors just buy them.
7868. Tried to get her to take some other methods, but she went with that. Again, we don't have anybody?
People want the doctor to fix them.
Whoops. That was a good catch.
Yeah.
Winner, pick a winner.
Yeah.
7857. You missed me by one.
All right,
All right, thank you.
we had a good meeting today, right?